Welcome everyone to Rules Explained. In this episode, we're going over the game Oger. We will be going over map sheets and counters. I am John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
And let's get started. So in our first episode, we went over solo play, game balance. We went a bit over the history of the game. We talked about the basic scenario, how the game is set up. We'll be going over the map sheet and counters. So the map sheet, the first thing I thought that was really neat was the map sheet is divided into hexagons because hexagons are the bestagons. And they represent 1,500 meters across. I calculated this out, and it's almost a mile. It's like 0.93. Yeah. So each square we could say is roughly 1 mile. Each turn is 4 minutes in length in game time. No idea why they picked 4 minutes. Any idea?
My suggestion, based on old wargaming habits, is they wanted to go ahead and use a scale that would allow for the following. One, a reasonable amount of time in the turns to suggest a lot of different things going on. It's not just one shot, it's a barrage of shots. Mm-hmm. It also suggests units recovering, retreating, possibly even self-repairing because this is the future. It also allows you to go ahead and suggest these units are moving at fast speed, because if you try to go ahead and do a mile hex and you only used a minute for your time frame, if you figure something moving at 60 miles an hour is moving a mile a minute, you can see how that would kind of mess up with the whole movements phase.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Yeah, because if each hex is roughly 1 mile and each turn is 4 minutes, and if they're moving 2 hexes, that's 2 miles. So you've gone 2 miles in 4 minutes. That's what, 30 miles an hour?
Yeah, it's not that fast at all.
Something like that. But still, it gives you an idea of time and space, I guess.
Yes.
So on our map sheet, that's the hexagons. Then we have craters. Craters, you're able to fire over, but you cannot move through. Hexagons are impassable. No units may move into or over a crater, so that includes infantry, tanks, GEVs, including ogres. But you may fire over craters.
The narrative assumption is that this battle is taking place over an area that has been ravaged by pre-bombardment as well as just constant fighting between these tactical nuclear-armed units. So that's why you have all these craters and all this rubble lying around and no actual terrain. Plus, just from a game designing standpoint, it made for a very interesting game because you had a very linear gameplay. It was all about, how are you going to take out the ogre, not so much where you're maneuvering to, how are you going to take out the ogre.
The ogre's not easy to take out either. Then we have rubble. So the heavy markings along the hex sides indicates lesser obstruction. Only ogres and infantry may cross these hexes. Units may fire over rubble. So it sounds like everything but infantry. Would that be accurate?
Yes, essentially, as far as...
No, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It says only ogres and infantry
Yes.
may cross these hexes. So GEVs, howitzers, what am I missing?
When it comes, you got your GVs, your heavy tanks, your missile tanks. Howitzers in Oger don't move, and the GEV supplement, they got the mobile howitzers. But yeah, if you were to use those, absolutely, they could not move through it.
Okay. And then we have clear areas. It says this is the area free of craters, rubble. The hexes numbers ending in 17 through 22. We have a map down here. I don't see any numbers on it. I was kind of hoping I would.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I mean, do each of the hexes have a number associated with them?
Yes. It's when they made games back in the day, games with the hexagonal maps. Yes. We used to play games going uphill both ways. Needless to say, they would put hex numbers on there for a variety of reasons. One of the possible reasons was for play by mail, so that way you could keep track of where units were, much like a chessboard. You can go ahead and locate a chess piece by using its coordinates. They would do that on most war games. That way, you keep track of where they are. Now, if you want to flip back to that map real quick,
Sure.
we can at least go ahead and indicate to the viewer and listener, well, the viewer technically, what's going on here. Obviously, the craters are very well marked. Those are the areas that look like they still got lava in them because they're nuclear created. They were created by nuclear weapons. And then the ridge lines would be representative of those areas that only infantry and ogres can pass through. And this is where things get really nasty because this becomes not so much a game of maneuvering as it becomes one of where is the ogre going to go and where can I attack him from.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a look, if you keep scrolling back and forth, there's not much you can do here if you're the defender. You're just going to be a very static defender anyway.
Yeah.
So where you place your units first is going to be extremely important in this game.
Yeah, it really is a maze.
Yes.
Huh. So that is, and then the clear areas, we have obstructed areas. This is the top part of the map. So the top part of the map, the hexagons is numbered 1 through 16. So the map, what are there? 16? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. There's 15 across.
I think the intent was to figure out a way to limit the possibilities of maneuver to just keeping everybody on the map.
Gotcha. So obstructed area, this is the top part of the map, the hexagons with numbers ending in 0, 1 through 16. Leaving the map, no unit may move off the map unless a scenario specifically calls for it to do so. It may be assumed that the top and sides of the map are bounded by swamp and impassable. The bottom of the map is a river which only ogres may enter. Ogres may leave the map by entering the river, but may not re-enter the game. So basically, stay on the map.
Yep.
Unless the scenario specifically calls for it. Because I know in the basic game is if the ogre basically got to the other side.
Yeah, destroy the command post and keep going.
So that's the map. So now we have counters. So a standard counter. These counters represent individual military units. Each standard counter carries a symbol and name which shows its type, the 4 numbers which indicate its capabilities, attack strength and range, defensive strength, and maneuver points. Standard counters are of the following types. So we have heavy tanks, missile tanks, ground effective vehicles, howitzers, infantry, army units, the command post, and then the ogre itself. And on page 22, we actually have the counters. And Rob, why don't you go over them?
All right. Again, the simplicity of the design is a beauty. You don't have to go ahead and give me 3-dimensional renderings. You can just give me a silhouette and let my imagination run wild. But in essence, you can see here, we'll take a look at the right side first. The right side will go ahead and give you going from top left and then going clockwise. D3, that's your defensive capability. And M3 is your movement points you have each turn. Then you go down and to the bottom, and that right side number would represent the range of your attack, and the left side number will represent your attack value. This game uses an old-fashioned CRT, which is very, very prevalent amongst war games, even up through when we did the Warhammer 40,000 episodes. We mentioned the fact that you had to reference a chart to see if you damaged or killed or inflicted a wound or whatever the case may be. And just like that game, the predecessors to Warhammer 40K Road Trader were all using these CRTs, combat result tables. So what you would do is you do a simple odds ratio. My 4 attack versus a 2 defense means I was attacking with a 2-to-1 value. We can show that when we get to that part of the review later on. And then you would roll a die, and then depending on the dice roll would indicate what happened to the unit that you attacked.
Okay, so the D is the damage.
Defense.
Oh, defense. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the upper is defense and then movement. So I'm moving 3 hexes per turn.
Yep.
I know that this is a heavy tank with a 4 attack value and 2 range.
2 range.
Okay. And
So it's going to pack a heavy punch, but it's very limited as far as how far it's going to pack that punch.
Okay, so a 2, yeah, you're right. That is not very far, looking at the other stuff. Okay, so now we have a missile tank.
Mm-hmm.
So he has a defense of 2, so he's not very defensive. A movement of 2, so he's a bit slower than the heavy tank.
Mm-hmm.
He only does 3 attack value, but he has a 4 range.
And this is where the beauty of the game comes in. Again, it's not so much about your tactical maneuvering. It's about units and how you utilize those units. Just like you said, the heavy tank, it's got a big punch, low range. This unit has a lot more range, but it's slow, and it's maybe not going to go ahead and pack that same punch.
Okay. And then the GEVs. GEVs are a unique unit. So what's his movement? What's that 4-3?
That means in the movement phase, you move 4. And then there's a second special GEV movement phase, in which you move another 3. This allows the GEV to conduct hit and run maneuvers. It is a very fast, maneuverable, lightly armed vehicle, but and obviously it's not. You can see that it's not going to pack a punch at all with a 2-2. But needless to say, because it can move out of the combat area, the Ogre is going to have a very difficult time with it, because it just rushes in, attacks you, and then rushes back out.
And depending upon the range of the Ogre, it depends upon the... well, here, the Ogre's down here, so what... we don't see any of his stuff.
That is correct.
That's right. He's got a special card, doesn't he?
Yes, you keep track of the Ogre's stats on a piece of paper, because the Ogre is yes, is one individual massive fighting vehicle, but you can't take out the vehicle. You have to just whittle it down. You take out a gun, you take out a missile rack, you take out its treads, so that way it slows it down and eventually forces it to stop.
Okay.
And even then, the narrative of the game suggests that even after you do all that, the Ogre is still quote unquote alive. The artificial intelligence is still scheming ways to destroy you underneath those many meters of BPC armor.
Okay, and then we have light tanks, which have a defense of 2, movement of 3. It looks like 3 is a very common movement value for the most part. 2 defensive, not as good as a heavy tank, that's for the light tank. 2 attack and 2 range, so he's middle of the... but your howitzer, holy cow, 6/8. The range on that thing and the punch of that thing is ridiculous.
But look at the defensive value, and it's immobile.
Yeah, once you place him, he's not moving.
Yep. But my goodness sakes, those are going to be the dangerous weapons to go ahead and use. You place those behind a ridge or two, keep them, in a way that they can cover the logical approach to command post, and that Ogre is going to find itself in trouble, which, by the way, is the reason why a howitzer costs 2 armor units when you try to go ahead and set up your defense, because they are so powerful.
Right, and I think you choose it by attack value. Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Well, no, the infantry is chosen by attack value. They just use the generic term armor when you're buying anything besides infantry. So you just choose a number of armor units based upon the scenario, and howitzers cost twice that.
Gotcha.
Because the thing that you got to consider is that the shortcomings and advantages of each unit would basically mean, if you want to think about it in traditional point value, they would all balance out. I mean, every one of these would probably be about the same amount of points, because of the way the defense and movement and range and firepower all kind of work out, except for, of course, like we just said, the howitzer.
True, that's a good point. And they also have a train down here, which I didn't see initially. It's got a 3 defense, 4 movement /5, so he's moving in both movement phases. Yeah. Or at least that top one is.
There are some scenarios which, the Ogre has to destroy the train as it's moving across on the railroad tracks. There is not much about its offensive value, although I've seen home rules where somebody says, "Okay, I got a rail gun on here," so that they count it as a mobile howitzer,
Oh, okay.
which really overpowers the train. But what the heck, it makes for a fun scenario.
This is interesting. So they have these white counters, and then down here they have these black counters. Is this
Yes,
just for contrast, or does this mean anything?
this is from the game GEV. Actually, these counters that we're looking at right now. And this game assumed that maybe there would be battles that you would fight against the enemy without ogres, an actual conventional war, where you have tanks versus tanks, infantry versus infantry. So that's the other side.
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, that's actually really cool. All right. Okay, that's it for counters. Did you
And
have
one more
anything else?
thing.
Yeah.
And then the back of the counter, you'll notice, has the phrase disabled on it because there are combat results which do not destroy the unit,
Oh, here
it
they are.
just knocks it out. The
Okay.
narrative of the game says that the crew could be stunned, wounded, or whatever, but the limited AI on board each one of these vehicles will keep it running and will be doing minor repairs to itself. So a disabled unit is not destroyed; it comes back the next turn. And if you enter a hex with a disabled unit, it can defend itself using automated defense systems.
Which is why it has the defense value in the upper left-hand corner.
That is correct.
Okay, that makes sense. Then we got infantry. All right, let's bounce back here. So we have our standard counters. We have our heavy tanks, which you went over. This counter represents a single main battle tank, the missile tank. This counter represents a single, less heavily armored missile firing crawler vehicle. Your GEV, your ground effect vehicle, that's a unique one because it moves in both movement phases. This counter represents a single highly mobile armored and armored air cushion vehicle. Each GEV moves twice per turn. Then you have your howitzer. This counter represents a single non-self-propelled heavy missile cannon. You're a glass cannon, mind you. The infantry is kind of interesting. You can actually combine infantry. We'll talk more about that later. But these counters come in 3 types, representing 1, 2, or 3 squads of infantry. That's it. There's no 5, 6, 7, or 8. There's just 1, 2, or 3.
Mm-hmm.
You have your armor unit designation. The above standard counters will sometimes be referenced to collectively as armored units. Then you have your command post, which if it's destroyed, game over.
Yeah.
That's interesting. This counter represents a strategic communication center. It is immobile and has an attack and defense strength of 0. That is, any attack automatically destroys it, and it may be rammed by an ogre without damage to the ogre. Whew! Wouldn't want to ruin that paint job.
No.
A player whose command post is lost has lost the game, but may continue to fight and inflict damage on his opponent.
Which
I wonder
is
if there
done
are.
to,
I'm sorry, go on.
as we discussed in the last episode, there are different levels of losing, or if you're the ogre player, different levels of winning.
Very
So
true.
you may want to go ahead and, even though you've lost the game, at least minimize your losses by perhaps completely disabling the ogre or ruining its ability to continue combat operations.
So the ogre counter, these counters represent 2 types. You have the Mark III and the Mark V. Each represents a single robotic fighting machine equipped with guns, missiles, anti-personnel weapons, and heavy armor. The Mark V is larger and more formidable than the Mark III. So the 3 is wimpy for an ogre versus a Mark V. The capabilities of the ogre are not shown on these counters. They change throughout the game as the ogre is damaged and as shown on the ogre record sheet. Then the back printing, all counters are back printed. The reverse side of the armor unit counter shows that the unit is in a disabled state. Ogre and infantry counters have different values on front and back for flexibility of play. I wonder if they have, I would love to, here's some.
Yep.
So these are, oh, hello. Oh, that's GEV. Okay, so the Mark III has 2 missile bays. Wow. 6 attack at a range 5.
Yep.
The defense 3. What's this 0? Okay, so there's 2 of them. Okay.
Yep.
So as they get destroyed, you cross these off.
Mm-hmm.
It has 1 main battery, which is 4/3. Defensive capability of 4. Okay, so when I attack, I'm attacking a specific section
Yes.
of the Ogre. I'm just not attacking the Ogre. I'm attacking the secondary battery, the missiles, the anti-personnel stuff.
Yep.
Okay. Then it's got 4 secondary batteries. My God, this thing's a walking
Yeah, remember, this is the small
armory.
version.
Yeah, this is 8 anti-personnel, 1 wand against infantry or command post. Looks like it got quite a few of those. Then it has treads. Ah, I see. And as you knock out the treads, its movement value drops.
Yeah, it starts with a movement of 3, which is pretty darn fast. But then as you destroy tread units, its movement reduces significantly.
Okay, until it eventually can't move at all. So at what point is an ogre destroyed?
Never.
Never. Okay, it just keeps on going.
The ogre will keep going, and as I mentioned earlier, even after you disable all of its movement capabilities and disable every one of its weapons, the artificial intelligence within the ogre is still alive, still plotting, still trying to figure out how to destroy you. And there's even fiction to suggest that if it really wanted to, it could self-destruct and take out like everything within like 2 or 3 hexes and
Wow.
just immolate itself.
All right, so here's the Mark 5. So he's got 4 more missile bays,
Yeah,
1 more
this is
main
intense.
battery.
Yeah.
He's got 2 more secondary batteries. Instead of having 8, it has 12 anti-personnel, and it has 60 tread units. Wow.
This
Yeah.
thing is incredible.
It's a beast.
Yeah.
All right, and that's going to take us through for the map and the counters. Next week, we're going to pick up with the turn sequence and talk about the actual turn. So with that, Rob, did you have anything else?
No, except for those of you who are interested. Obviously, we have the background that John has. He's indicating he's got the ogre right behind him. So if you're wondering what an ogre looks like, if John, you wanted to shift over slightly,
Oh, there it is. Oh, here.
there it is.
There it is. I got
The
the blueprints and
ogre
everything.
Mark V. But yes, that's all I had. I just wanted to impress people with the design. It's a rather fantastic piece of engineering.
All right, we'd like to thank Ethan for the music. If you have any questions, comments, please email us at rulesexplained@gmail.com. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast. We're on TuneIn, Spotify. You can find us on our YouTube channel, Rules Explained. I'm John Merritt.
I'm Rob Nothing.
Guys, thank you for listening.
Adios.